Hello, I'm Ian Scales and you're watching Telecom TV's Alternative Agenda. That's our series on disruptive business models. Every telco and, it seems, just about every comms and IT company claims cloud, be it services, infrastructure, computing, is its big thing. And to be honest, they all say pretty much the same things about the sort of services they're bringing to market. But our disruptive company today, Cloudscaling, claims it's got a different approach. Has it? Well, we'll find out. I'm joined by David Bernstein, who is the VP of Strategy at Cloudscaling. David, welcome.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about the importance of software and what you're up to.
Well, at Cloudscaling, software is the secret ingredient to building clouds as far as we're concerned. We're a software company, and so as we approach our clients and customers who want to build these large clouds, then we bring the software to the table to do that.
So basically, give us an idea, what sort of cloud are you advocating?
Well, we serve a particular market. We serve the service provider who wants to build the web scale cloud, which we can talk more about.
Yep.
That's the large cloud, not the private cloud, the public cloud, or the large private cloud for the telco themselves.
So it's a little bit like the Google or the Amazon approach.
That's right. Not only in the interface to the cloud itself, the way you use it, but in the philosophy by which you build it, which is really the important part.
What's the difference between, say, the approach that many companies are taking now and the approach that Google, Amazon and Cloudscaling are taking in terms of building that cloud?
Well, there's really two angles to it. One, we concentrate on the large cloud. So it's one thing to do a data center consolidation project or a VMware cluster of a couple of 100 CPUs, but it's another thing to attempt to build a 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 server cloud. This is a pretty large endeavor and requires a whole different way of thinking. And the second thing is that we look to help service providers. And so these are people who are going to turn this into a business. And so there's lots of other software around the basic cloud operating system to make that thing manageable and that you can operate it as a service.
We'll go into the detail of all of that in a minute. But I'm confused slightly because, what are the other people out there in the market, the HPs and the IBMs and so on, the traditional suppliers of infrastructure and services to telcos and service providers? What's the difference between what they're offering and what you're offering?
Well, to really build a cost-effective cloud, and I mean when you look at what Amazon or Google or Microsoft have done, they've been able to scale, and they've been able to scale big. So to do this, you have to throw everything out and think new. Simplicity is your friend. So in order to make a 100,000 server cloud and manage it, you have to build it with simplicity in mind, using a particular kind of architecture that builds a reliable system out of components with, at that scale, statistics are going to get you, and you're going to have some failures in the hardware and in the network. So the software takes care of that through replication, through automation, through distribution. And so that's one of the really big differences.
And what do the other companies do? Are they still more attached to the old style of doing IT?
Well, the other companies really are approaching, there's two different angles. One, the other companies are focused on the old kind of cloud, the old kind of applications. So they're not really building for the new service provider of the future. They're really building to run the old software. So with that comes a lot of baggage and a lot of complexity, and then a lot of expense. So they're bringing their traditional hardware to the table, their traditional software, their complicated networks. They're constructing large systems to run existing software, and that's going to cost a lot more, and that's not going to get you into the applications of the future.
So in many cases, the model in their minds there is that they will help companies with virtualizing their applications onto specific services and kind of outsource them to a data center.
Right.
Is that the sort of model we're talking about?
Right.
Here?
We call that the legacy cloud.
Okay. So let's get into a bit more detail then. What exactly do you offer a company? When you go in and you talk to them about what you're going to do, tell us what you offer them. What are you saying to them about the way they could construct their data center?
Right. Well, most service providers know that Google has figured something out that they haven't, or Amazon has figured something out that they haven't. And that's very true. To build a cloud that is even going to work and be manageable at the 100,000 server or greater level, you have to construct it with an architecture that's different. You have to use lots of very standard commodity components. You have to have very large, low feature, high performance networks, very large flat layer 2 networks. You have to build this with simplicity in mind and with failure in mind. so that the software can make a reliable system out of unreliable components.
Right.
And you have to be prepared to operate it as such.
Yes.
So you have to have the management and the automation and the capabilities around that.
And that's essentially what I suppose that Google did in building its huge sort of hardware infrastructure. It followed that kind of approach.
That's right. And when the statistics in every way get you, right? So simplicity is your friend, complication is your enemy. You want the simple servers, you want the simple network, you want the lower cost networking switches. You want to use copper networking as much as possible because it's lower cost. You want the server stacked so that if a server dies, you leave the server failed in place, turn it off, it doesn't use energy, but don't go in and mess with it because you're probably going to break something. So a large data center in a cloud, in a web scale cloud, is a very different sort of beast, right? You plan for a server replacement cycle on its depreciation cycle of a few years, right? And leave it in place up till then.
Now that strikes me that, it all makes perfect sense and so on, but it strikes me that it's a completely antithetical way to the way most telcos especially, and general purpose service providers, I suppose we could call them, have spent 30 years developing their business. They tend to look at things in the reverse way, don't they, which is that you build reliability and all of the qualities that they want to project to their market into the specific pieces of hardware. Is it going to be difficult for you to kind of work on that? You've got to, before you can go in and sell them anything, you've got to get them thinking in a different way about this.
Well, the world's upside down in a lot of ways here. There's a few different driving factors for people to think about how important cloud is. On the one hand, the way most service providers work is they start with the idea of the application of the value-added service they want to create. And then they bring, whether that be, let's say, voicemail or group calling or video or messaging, what have you. They want to make that as efficient as possible and to reduce the CapEx that they need because it's dedicated CapEx. So they'll reduce that to a small set of machines, which therefore have to be very reliable because it's a small set of machines. So you're driven to a small set of machines that do one feature, a small set of machines that do another feature. So to launch a new feature, you need to purchase new machines. And they have to stay up and be reliable because there's only a few dozen of them to serve a pretty large, medium-sized country. In a cloud philosophy, it's the other way around. You start off with the idea of the platform that's going to serve all features. So this is the big cloud we have, guys. Everything goes on it. Your storage goes on it. Your computing goes on it. You layer on voice services and software if you want, messaging services and software. And so one feature is not limited to a small set of servers. So if there's failures in the system, the software can migrate, and there's as many servers as needed then for any individual feature. It's a whole different way of thinking.
Right. Now, how do you migrate then? Because you've got a traditional telco in one corner with the system that you've just outlined, and you're asking them to move to a completely different architecture. Can you just make the jump, or is there a kind of migration path that you can do?
Well, it's sort of like you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. I mean, the service providers are realizing that for them to compete with these kinds of new offerings, they've got to do something differently. They know there's a problem with their current infrastructure. They look at the over-the-top service providers and they say, how can they offer these services for free or at these cost profiles? And when we come to them and say, well, here's an answer, here's a platform that'll work with you, then that's where they have the aha moment. Oh, that's how they did it, right? They build this in a different way.
So there's those moments, are they, that you think you're after in terms of bringing a company around to your way of thinking?
Yeah, although we're not the only advocate of this philosophy, but what we are is one of the few companies that is stepping up to build the largest clouds. Most of the companies in our space are looking to implement the private cloud for the enterprise, a little less ambitious, but we've had some great experiences with several service providers, and we've built country-sized clouds, so we're quite pleased with the way that's gone.
And we were talking before about this too. There's another way of looking at how you divide get away from the silos within telcos to do this, which is called the DevOps approach. Could you elaborate on that a little bit more?
The DevOps approach is something that has evolved in software development and cloud development, and that is traditionally in software development or service development, one team will create what the service is. throw it over to the deployment group, who then creates the network and the servers, throws it over to the operations group, and then they live with it. And the software guys are like, okay, we're done with that. The way that these new businesses run are to create a platform that everybody uses and make it as large and as fast and as simple as possible. And tell the software team, that's what you've got, and let's make that work. And then the software guys build the services, deploy the services, run the services. They develop them, they operate them. DevOps. Yes. So that team is the team that lives with it. So they start out by matter of necessity with a simple service and watch it and see how it works and see how people like it and see if it scales, and they live with it. And so this way they're the platform and the services and the operations are all close together with one group of people managing it.
Right.
And that is how you get a service that works at scale.
And is that a necessary part of the approach? Do you have to develop that to do this scaling properly?
That's, in cloud land, right? It's kind of like the agile of cloud. It's the way teams have come to figure out how to make services that actually scale and work.
And I suppose the other side of that, developing and then running is, you're on a different kind of cycle in terms of the way you write off and then retire hardware. It must be a kind of continuous churn.
On the software side, you're on a continuous release. There's a bug, you fix it, you deploy it. Yeah. There's a bug, you fix it, you deploy it. You're on a continuous fix and deploy cycle because it's your software. So that minute you fix it and it's live, right? The hardware underneath, you're quite disconnected with because you're running on this virtualized environment with all this automation, and underneath you there may be hardware refresh cycles that are going on that you're even unaware of, or the cloud is growing, or you're landing in a new data center. That's the beauty of it, right?
You separate those functions and they can operate independently.
That's right.
And give us an idea of what sort of applications service providers are going to be able to fold into their new scaled up clouds. What sort of capabilities are going to be able to be migrated across?
Well, cloud has been attractive as a new way of hosting legacy applications, and that's been great for a certain class of service providers, but that's not really what we're talking about. What we're really talking about here is that whether the service provider is offering a storage service, a content delivery network, maybe a new kind of voice or video conferencing system, some kind of a home security, video monitoring. There's a lot of different applications. We're in the business of creating the platform that has the scale characteristics and has the cost characteristics so they can go create those businesses. They can utilize their access network. They can utilize their mobile network. They can create value that's going to work for the service provider. That's their business. But we know for sure that in today's world, it's sort of necessary, maybe necessary but not sufficient, necessary to have a modern platform. That's what we give them, right? So that they can go build these new sorts of businesses. And we think there's a lot of opportunities for all kinds of different service providers to compete with the new over-the-top players and combine their network assets. I can't predict whether that's going to be a great business for them or not, but I know if they don't have this kind of platform, they will price themselves out of the market. So.
Okay, David, well, thank you very much. That's been very interesting.
Well, thank you, too.